Leo was just a human technician, not a soldier, not a scientist. Just the guy who fixed broken doors, blinking panels, and humming wires. He had been working on the alien space station Corthalis for 6 months, most of the alien crew ignored him, except when something needed fixing. That was fine by him. He liked quiet. He liked wires more than people, but today was not a quiet day. It started with a strange repair order from Level 9. Level 9 was supposed to be sealed. The files marked it as a biostorage zone, restricted after an old accident. But the panel near the entrance was blinking red, and Leo had been told to check it. So, he took his tools and went down the long, cold corridor alone. When he arrived, the doors to Level 9 hissed open like they hadn't moved in years. Dust floated in the air, and the lights flickered like they were scared to wake up. Inside, he found the panel. It looked normal at first, just a few loose wires and a warning in alien script. He sighed, pulled out his scanner, and got to work. Everything was going fine until he saw the button. It was small, metallic, and hidden behind a damaged circuit. There was no label, no protective cover, just there. He should have left it alone. He knew that, but curiosity got the better of him. Maybe it resets the panel, he mumbled to himself, and he pressed it. The station screamed. Lights turned red, sirens howled, and a deep robotic voice echoed through the hallway. Warning, stasis containment breach. Leo froze. He looked around, heart racing. From the end of the corridor, a metal wall slid open slowly with a loud, grinding sound. Mist spilled out from inside like breath from a frozen mouth. Leo stepped back. A tall glass pod stood in the center of the hidden chamber. Inside, it was a girl, or something that looked like one. She had pale blue skin that shimmered under the emergency lights. Her long silver hair floated inside the pod like it was underwater. Her eyes were closed, but her fingers twitched. Then, without warning, the pod hissed and opened. Leo panicked. He looked for a way to shut it again, to undo what he did, but it was too late. Her eyes opened, bright, white, and glowing. She stepped out slowly, her bare feet touching the cold floor. She looked at Leo, head tilting slightly, not angry, not scared. Just confused, like she was trying to remember something. Leo raised both hands. "Hey, it's okay. I didn't mean to wake you," he said slowly. Of course, she didn't understand English. She didn't attack either. She just stared at him. Like she was trying to read his thoughts, a soft alarm continued to beep from the corner of the chamber. Leo looked around. There were other pods behind her, some broken, some still sealed. Files were scattered on the ground, old and dusty. He picked one up and tried to read the alien script. Only 2 words blinked in red across every screen. In the room, Prototype 7. Active. Leo looked at the girl again. "Prototype," he whispered. Was she a weapon? A science project? A prisoner? Why was she sealed away in a hidden part of the station? Why did the system call her a breach? Before he could think more, a voice called out from his communicator. "Leo, are you on Level 9? "We got alarms up here," he quickly replied. "It's a false trigger. Just a power surge. I'll fix it." He didn't know why he lied. Maybe because he didn't trust the others with her. Maybe because, in her glowing eyes, he didn't see a monster. He saw someone lost, alone. She stepped closer to him, then pointed to the other sealed pods. Her voice was soft, almost broken. "They wake soon." Leo's blood turned cold. What did she mean by they? Were they more like her? Were they worse? He took a shaky breath. "I need to get you out of here," he whispered. She nodded. Then, from somewhere deeper in the shadows, another pod made a cracking sound. Leo didn't wait. He grabbed his tools, motioned for her to follow, and started running down the corridor. He had no plan, no idea what he was doing. All he knew was he pressed the wrong button, and now everything was going very, very wrong. Leo didn't look back as he ran. The alien girl followed silently. Barefoot on the cold metal floor, her silver hair trailing behind like smoke, they passed the blinking warning lights, the empty maintenance carts, and the motionless security cams. Everything felt too quiet, too wrong. It was like the station itself was holding its breath when they reached an abandoned cargo lift. Leo stopped to catch his breath. The girl stood still, watching him, eyes glowing gently in the dark. He didn't know what to say. He had just broken a sealed chamber, released something classified, and lied to command. And now he had a glowing alien girl standing in front of him who had barely said 10 words. He reached for his scanner, trying to get a reading from her. The device blinked twice and then shut down. It couldn't read her biology. That had never happened before. She finally spoke, her voice slow and uncertain. Others. Waking, Leo blinked. Others. Who? She pointed toward the elevator shaft, her face tightening like she was remembering pain. Us. Born here, then locked. Dreamed for a long time. Leo didn't understand all of it. But one thing was clear. She wasn't the only one. Back in that sealed hallway, more pods were waking up. He pressed the lift button, but it stayed dark. The power was still damaged. Probably from the alarms he triggered, he opened a side panel and began rewiring it. Fingers shaking, the girl crouched beside him, watching every move like she had never seen anything like it before. Her curiosity was strange, childlike, and sharp at the same time. Like she was learning, absorbing every detail. He tried to distract himself. "Do you have a name?" he asked. She tilted her head. "Name? Yeah. What do they call you?" She paused, then pressed a finger to her own chest. "Sev." Leo nodded slowly. "Sev? Okay, I'm Leo." He smiled nervously, but she just stared. Expression unreadable. The lift sparked and rumbled. Then the doors opened slowly. Leo pulled Sev inside, hit a button for a low traffic level, and prayed the alarms hadn't triggered a full lockdown yet. As the lift moved, Sev turned her head sharply, her glowing eyes narrowing. Leo followed her gaze. Something was crawling up the shaft. "Too fast, too smooth, get down," he shouted, pulling her close, just as the lights flickered and something slammed against the side of the lift. Metal groaned, the lift jerked, and they both fell to the floor above them. Claws screeched across the metal ceiling. Sev's eyes widened, and for a moment her skin shimmered brighter. She whispered something Leo couldn't understand, then silence. The lift stopped suddenly on a half-lit maintenance floor. Leo yanked the door open, grabbed Sev's arm, and ran behind them. The thing in the shaft howled low, sharp, and not human. They slipped into an unused storage room, locking the door behind them. Leo sat on the floor, heart pounding, trying to breathe. Sev stood near the window, her face pale, eyes glowing softly. "What was that?" he whispered. She answered without turning around. "One of them. But not whole." Leo didn't like the sound of that. He looked around the room, old boxes, spare parts, some food packs, and a dusty terminal. He wiped it off and tried to access the station's security logs after a few tries. He managed to pull a feed from level 9. The screen showed the pod chamber. But now more of them were open. Something crawled along the walls, fast, multi-limbed, barely visible under the flickering lights. Leo felt sick. Sev stepped beside him and touched the screen gently. "They left us. Broke us. Now they fear us." Leo didn't know what to say. He had stumbled into something ancient and buried deep. Something the galaxy wanted to forget. But now it was waking up. He looked at Sev. She wasn't like the others. She didn't kill, didn't attack, didn't scream. She warned him, helped him, followed him. And that scared him even more. Because if she was the good one, What were the others going to be like? Leo didn't sleep that night. He sat on the cold floor of the supply room, watching the security feed over and over every time he blinked. He saw more of those crawling things moving around level 9. They were fast, silent, and wrong. There. Bodies didn't walk. They shifted like shadows with claws. Sev hadn't said much since they hid. She curled up near the corner. Her eyes half closed, but always alert. Her breathing was slow, almost like she was meditating. Leo didn't know if she was tired, scared, or just waiting for something worse. He didn't even know what she really was. He only knew one thing: he had woken something that wasn't supposed to exist. And now, it was his problem. By morning cycle, the lights in the hallway outside flickered again. Leo stood and stretched, his body aching from hours on the floor. "We can't stay here," he whispered. Sev slowly opened her eyes and nodded. They stepped out of the storage room, keeping their heads low. There were no footsteps, no voices. Just the soft hum of the station's failing systems. He checked the terminal again. Communications were blocked. Power was unstable, and level 9 had been sealed off remotely, but someone knew, someone had seen the breach, and they were covering it up instead of fixing it. Leo guided Sev through the old maintenance tunnels. They were tight and dusty, but no cameras, no patrols, and no signs of the things from the pods. They needed answers, real answers. So he headed for a place he wasn't supposed to go. Buried near the center of the station was an old archive room. It wasn't part of daily operations anymore, but Leo had repaired its cooling system weeks ago. He remembered seeing old files, strange logs, and locked data cores that no one talked about. If the truth was anywhere, it would be there when they reached the archive door. Leo hacked the lock open. Sev stood behind him, quiet as always, but he noticed her hands were shaking slightly. She didn't like this place. And the air smelled like old metal and secrets inside the archive. Lights buzzed weakly above rows of forgotten machines and blinking data drives. Leo found a working console, tapped in his clearance, and started digging. He bypassed 3 firewalls to alert traps, and finally cracked into a hidden set of files marked Archive Delta Shadow. There were hundreds of logs, audio, text, video, all from almost a century ago. The earliest files talked about a secret alliance of alien species they wanted. A new kind of soldier, faster, stronger, able to survive radiation, cold, even vacuum. So they made them in labs on hidden stations like Corthalis. Leo's hands trembled as he played one of the logs. It was a voice, rough and tired. "They were perfect at first," the voice said, "but then they started changing, not physically, but inside. They weren't just weapons. They were thinking, feeling, asking questions." Another log played. "They begged not to be put to sleep. But command decided they were too dangerous, so we sealed them, burned the records, shut the doors, and swore to never speak of it again." Leo turned to Sev, who was now staring at the screen with wide eyes. "I was made for war," she whispered, "but I never wanted it." Leo swallowed hard. "You weren't supposed to wake up." She nodded slowly. "But you pressed the button." He chuckled nervously. "Yeah, I kinda wish I hadn't." Sev stepped closer, her voice calm but firm. "The others, they're not like me anymore. Too long asleep, too much pain." Leo didn't ask what that meant. He already knew. He copied the logs to his wrist drive, grabbed a map of the station's sealed levels, and closed the console. They had the truth now, but the truth wasn't safe. Not here. Not with the others waking. Not with the station command hiding everything as they turned to leave. The archive door suddenly slammed shut. Red lights lit the walls, and a cold voice echoed from hidden speakers. "Unauthorized access detected. Purging sequence initiated." Leo's heart dropped. They were going to fry the room, burn all evidence, and them with it. Sev didn't panic. She walked to the far wall, placed her hand against a panel. And the metal rippled like water. A secret exit, hidden even from the main systems. Leo stared. How did you know that was there? She looked at him, eyes glowing. I was made here, she whispered. I remember everything. Asterisk smoke trailed from Leo's shirt as they ran through the tunnel behind the archive wall. The purge system had activated just seconds after they escaped, burning everything behind them. If Sev hadn't known about that hidden passage, they would have been ash by now. Leo couldn't stop thinking about it. Who built this tunnel? Why did it respond only to her touch? And what else did she remember that he didn't ask about yet? They reached an upper deck that looked completely untouched by the chaos below. It was quiet, too clean, and full of alien officers walking calmly. Like nothing had happened, Leo pulled Sev behind a storage unit and listened. One of the officers was speaking through a communicator. Yes, Level 9 has been fully sealed. No signs of survivors. Prototype 7's signal is inactive. Leo's stomach dropped. They were talking about Sev calling her by number, not name, and lying about her being dead. Sev didn't move. She stared ahead like she already knew this would happen. They lied before, she whispered. They lie again. Leo had to think fast. The officers would report back to the commander. And if they knew Sev was still alive, they'd send more than just lies. They'd send soldiers, maybe worse. He remembered something from the archive Day 10 emergency dock bay hidden near the reactor shaft. Rarely used, unguarded, and connected to a decommissioned shuttle. If he could get there, maybe they could escape. Or at least get out far enough to send a message. But Sev didn't move. She just stood there, staring up at the ceiling like she could see through it. They are waking too fast, she said softly. The pain inside them grows louder. Leo stepped closer. You mean the others? She nodded. They are not like me anymore. They were changed, burned inside by the years. They remember only hate. He didn't fully understand, but the fear in her voice was enough. They had to move, now. They crept along the walls, passing doors Leo had never seen before, rooms without labels. Rooms with strange symbols carved into the metal. Everything about this level felt wrong, like it had been cleaned too perfectly, sterile, but hiding something dark underneath. Then they reached the elevator to the emergency bay. Leo called it heart-pounding, every second feeling like a trap. But instead of the elevator, a voice came through the speaker above. Technician Leo Daniels, you are ordered to report to Commander Rithone immediately. Alone, Leo froze. The voice continued. Failure to comply will result in immediate execution of the unidentified lifeform with you. Sev turned to him, her face unreadable. They want you to choose, she said calmly. Leave me. Save yourself. But Leo didn't move. He stared at the speaker, jaw tight. I'm done following orders from liars, he said. He grabbed Sev's hand and pulled her into a nearby maintenance hatch. They climbed down 3 levels through emergency ladders, slipping through the cracks of a system trying to erase them. The station was no longer safe, not from what was waking below, and not from those running it as they neared the emergency dock. They heard voices, angry, mechanical, not from any known language. Sev stopped him with a hand across his chest. They're here, she whispered. The broken ones. Leo peeked around the corner. What he saw made his skin crawl. Tall figures, half flesh and half machine, moved slowly down the corridor. Their bodies twitched as if they were glitching with every step. They had no eyes, just dark plates across their faces and long, hooked arms that dragged along the walls. They weren't part of the crew. They weren't survivors. They were something left behind, and now they were awake. Sev stepped into the hallway before Leo could stop her. She stood tall, her skin glowing brighter than ever. The figures stopped, sniffed the air, then tilted their heads toward her. One of them spoke, crackling, broken sound that hurt to hear. 7. Traitor, protector. You failed. Leo watched in horror as Sev replied, "No," she said calmly. "I survived." The corridor trembled as the things let out a screech, and then they charged. Leo grabbed a power tool from the wall and ran to her side. He didn't know what these monsters were made of, or if he could even fight them, but one thing was clear: he wasn't going to leave her behind. The fight didn't last long. Leo swung his tool wildly, sparks flying with every impact, but the creatures barely flinched. They moved like broken machines, jerking, twisting, reacting in ways that made no sense. One grabbed his arm at touch. Was ice and metal fused together, and pain shot through his bones. Then Sev stepped forward. She didn't scream, didn't run, she raised both hands. And her skin began to glow white-hot. A pulse of energy burst from her chest. Slamming into the creatures, they shrieked, stumbled back, and their bodies flickered like they were losing signal. Leo fell to his knees, panting. One of the creatures crawled away into a vent. The others limped after it. They weren't dead, just retreating for now. Sev stood still, breathing hard. Her light faded and her knees shook. Leo caught her before she fell. "You okay?" he whispered. She nodded. Slowly, but her voice was faint. Too soon. Not enough strength. Leo helped her to a nearby wall. "You blasted them like a cannon," he muttered. "That's more than strength." But Sev wasn't smiling. "They are learning," she said. "Next time they will adapt." Leo stared at her. These things, these failed prototypes, they weren't mindless. They remembered her, called her traitor, and now they were adjusting. He checked the corridor, making sure it was clear. Then he tapped into a local terminal and pulled up the emergency shuttle map. The ship was still docked, barely powered, but functional. If they could reach it, maybe they could get off the station. Warn someone? Anyone? "Can you walk?" he asked. Sev nodded again, shakily. "I can, but I need time." Time was the one thing they didn't have. Leo made a choice. He would carry her. She didn't argue, just leaned into him as he lifted her into his arms. They moved fast, staying low, cutting through forgotten maintenance passages. Alarms began to sound again, not station-wide, but local. Whoever was watching knew they were moving as they reached the shuttle bay. Leo saw it, a small, old transport vessel, scratched and rusting, but still intact. He opened the hatch manually, using an override code he remembered from Morse word flaw/remembered. From his training. Inside was dark, cold, and covered in dust. He placed Sev gently on the co-pilot seat and rushed to the main controls. The power cells were low, and the navigation system hadn't been updated in years. But it could fly. He started the engines. Nothing. He checked the fuel line, clogged figures. As he grabbed tools from the emergency locker, Sev sat quietly, watching the stars through the window. Her voice broke the silence. "This ship. I remember it." Leo turned his head, confused. "What do you mean?" Her eyes softened. "This was the ship they used to bring us here. Long ago." Leo stared at the controls, feeling a chill rise in his spine. It was no accident that this shuttle was here. It was part of the past they were running from. The engine suddenly sparked to life. Leo jumped into the seat, heart racing. He looked at Sev, her hand glowing against the panel. "You jumpstart ships too?" he asked, half laughing. She didn't answer. Her face had gone pale again. "We need to go now," she said. "They are coming." Leo locked in the manual thrusters, pulled the release lever, and the ship jolted. The dock doors opened slowly, creaking as ancient systems groaned. Just before they launched, a voice came over the radio comm, sharp and cold. "Technician Leo Daniels, you are in possession of classified property. Return the subject or face termination by orbital strike." Leo didn't even touch the radio. He just looked at Sev. She didn't speak. But her hand reached for his. The shuttle broke free of the station and slipped into the void behind them. Red targeting lights blinked across the upper decks, and deep inside the ship's memory drive, something else quietly came online. The stars outside the shuttle looked peaceful, but inside, Leo could feel something wasn't right. The controls flickered even though power was stable. The temperature dropped slightly with each passing minute. Sev sat in silence. Her eyes locked on the ship walls like she could hear something hidden inside. Leo tried to check the nav system, but it kept glitching lines of alien code scrolling too fast to read. Then came the whisper, not through the speakers, not through the comms. It was inside his head. "Welcome back." He jerked back in the pilot's seat, looking around. "Did you hear that?" he asked Sev. She didn't look surprised. She just nodded slowly. "It has woken." Leo stood, heartbeat racing. "What is it?" She turned her glowing eyes toward the ceiling. This ship was not just transport, she said softly. It was a vault before he could ask more. The walls shifted, literally moved, panels sliding aside to reveal dark tubes running the length of the ship. Inside them, something pulsed. Not wires, not fuel lines. It looked alive. Leo backed up. "What is that?" Sev walked slowly to one of the walls and placed her hand over the tube. "It was supposed to be the failsafe," she whispered. "They called it the root code. A living machine designed to control us if we disobeyed." The lights above flickered again, and the ship jolted. The course changed on its own, pointing toward a black region of space with no star maps. Leo grabbed the manual override, but it didn't respond. The ship was no longer listening. "It's taking us somewhere," he said, voice tight. Sev nodded again. "It's taking us home." He stared at her. "What's home?" "Where they made you." "No," she whispered. "Where they buried what they couldn't kill." Leo stood frozen, staring at the blinking route on the screen. This wasn't a rescue. It was a trap, one designed years ago, waiting for any prototype to return. The root code inside the ship had recognized her presence the moment she powered the controls. Now it was in charge. "Can we stop it?" he asked. Sev hesitated. "There's a core buried beneath the ship's floor. It controls the AI's brain." Leo grabbed a laser cutter from the wall. "Then we cut it out." He pried open the floor panels, revealing a small, sealed chamber, cold mist leaking out. Inside, there was a crystal-like core. Floating between metal supports, it pulsed like a heartbeat. Leo aimed the cutter, but Sev grabbed his arm. "You touch it wrong. It will lock the ship and trigger an auto broadcast too." "The station? Then what?" Leo asked, frustrated. She walked past him, sat cross-legged beside the core, and placed both hands on her knees. "I was designed to obey this thing," she said, "but I am no longer who they built." Leo watched in silence as her skin began to glow again, but softer this time. She whispered a word in a language he couldn't understand. Her. The crystal core dimmed, paused, and blinked once like it was thinking. Then the walls around them shifted back. The navigation screen flickered, and the ship slowly came to a stop. Floating in silence, power back in Leo's control, he let out a long breath. "You overpowered the ship's mind," he said. "No," she replied. "I convinced it I was no longer its enemy." Leo looked at her with a mix of awe and fear. "You're not what I expected." Sev gave a tired smile. "Neither are you." They both stared out the window now, floating in open space, unsure what came next. But something still ticked quietly. Inside the ship's core, something that had not been fully convinced, and it had already sent a signal. The signal had already gone out. Leo didn't know who would answer it or what, but he felt it in his bones. Something ancient, something powerful. Now knew they were alive. The ship floated quietly in deep space, pretending to rest, but underneath, it was listening, Sev sat near the control panel, her body dimly glowing. She had given everything to slow the root code down, to stop it from dragging them into the unknown. But now she was weakening. Leo wrapped a thermal blanket around her shoulders. "You need rest," he said softly. She shook her head. "There is no time." He looked at the radar. A ship appeared on the edge of the system, not a rescue. Not a patrol. It was a command vessel, 10 times larger than theirs, and it was armed. "That's Commander Rethone," Sev whispered, without even looking. "He's come to erase us," Leo tightened his grip on the controls. Let him try. But the moment the other ship came into range, a sharp buzz filled the cabin. The root code core began to flicker again. Faster. It had been dormant, but not asleep. Sev's hands trembled. "It's responding to a signal." She said, "If it obeys again, we are finished." Leo stood, marched back to the core chamber, and stared at the glowing crystal. "It wants a decision," he muttered. "It wants to know who gives the orders now." He pulled a knife from the emergency kit. Sev stood behind him, shocked. "What are you doing?" "Giving it what it wants," Leo said. "Blood." He cut a shallow line across his palm and pressed it to the core's housing. The crystal paused, blinked slowly, then glowed brighter. Sev stepped forward. "This ship doesn't belong to the past anymore," she whispered. "It belongs to the one who chose to protect, not command." The control lights on the panel shifted from red to blue. The ship responded fully and completely. Weapons came online, shields activated, and a strange hum filled the air. Leo turned to Sev. "You still strong enough to fly this thing?" She smiled faintly. "With you beside me." Commander Rethon's voice echoed through the comms. "You've gone too far, technician. Surrender the prototype or be erased." Leo pressed the come button. "You want her?" He said, "Come get her." And the battle began. The command vessel opened fire. But Sev moved like lightning, weaving the small ship between blasts. Leo handled weapons' old cannons, now powered by something more than just fuel, every time. He fired. He could feel the ship respond, as if it wanted to win. Sev flew straight into the fire, but not for escape. She had a destination, one final stop. Below them was a derelict moon, long abandoned, but still carrying deep roots of the original lab. If they could land there, Sev could upload her memories into the network buried underground. The truth, the betrayal, the pain, they would never be buried again. The ship crash-landed hard, skidding across the dust, metal screaming. Leo helped Sev out of her seat, her steps shaky but full of purpose. Together, they entered the ruins. Guided by old lights and the whisper of systems that had waited decades, at the center stood an ancient uplinka, forgotten archive deep in the stone. Sev approached it, placed both hands on the panel, and closed her eyes. Light surged from her body into the walls. Leo watched as her memories flowed, images, sounds, voices of pain and hope and betrayal. It was like time itself was rewriting the story of what had been lost. Outside, Commander Rethon landed with soldiers. They stormed the ruins, weapons drawn, but it was too late. The truth had already been broadcast. Galactic channels lit up with Sev's story, what had been done to her and her kind. The lies, the silence, and the human who chose to help instead of fear. Rethon's voice cracked with rage. "You don't know what you've done." Leo stepped forward. "No," he said. "I know exactly what we've done." Behind him, Sev's glow faded slowly. Her body collapsed, but her consciousness had been uploaded. She was gone, but she was everywhere now. The war they feared never came. Instead, the galaxy paused, listened, and for the first time in years, remembered. Leo walked back to the shuttle. Alone but not empty, Sev's voice echoed softly from the ship's core. "Oops," she said. But this time, it was supposed to happen.